seaweed. What else? Bugs. So he said he even jumps out of the water to catch bugs. What kind of bugs fly? Let's put that away, Maya. I'm gonna hold it. I'm gonna hold it, and then at the end I'll give it back to you. Okay. So what was the message that Finn gave us? Gabriel, please, hands out. Okay. What was the message? It said, Jesus' power lets us live forever. Very good. One more time. Jesus' power lets us live forever. Very good. How long is forever? Like till tomorrow?
No, way longer.
Till the day after tomorrow?
No.
Till Christmas?
No, 1,000,000 days.
I think even more than 1,000,000 days. Like it never ends.
Yeah,
That's
infinite,
what.
Infinite.
Very good. It's just always. Forever is always. Very good. You guys are so good. Okay, let's review this week. So our very first day, we met who? Who was our first? Ramsey the ram, and he has big, strong horns. And what did Ramsey the ram teach us? He said, Jesus' power helps us to do. Very good. One more time. Jesus' power helps. Great job. You guys get a high five, everybody. Okay, then day 2, we met.
I know. Ava.
Ava the. Wait. Ava the red-tailed hawk. Very good. And Ava taught us that Jesus' power gives us hope. Very good. You guys are doing great. Okay, yesterday was day 3, and we met Sierra, and Sierra was a mountain lion. Very good. And they live where?
They live
On the mountain
at the
with
mountain.
snow.
In what area of the world?
In the snow.
They lived in North and South America, remember? Very good. And the message that Sierra gave us was, Jesus' power helps me to be bold. Very good. Okay, so today's friend is Finn. And Finn lives in the, what do you say, freshwater rivers. Sometimes they go to the ocean, but his message is Jesus' power lets us live. One more time. Jesus' power lets us live. Okay, Darren, come up here. I want you to help me. Yesterday's story, we talked about a young boy, and what was his name? Do you remember?
David.
Very good. Give me a high five. Good job. And what was David? He was what? What was the word that we used?
What is it?
David behaved how? What was our message yesterday from Sierra? Jesus' power helps us to be bold. So David was bold. How was David bold?
Quack, quack.
He didn't quack quack. How was he bold? Do you remember?
Quack, quack.
Did he defeat who?
The Goliath.
He defeated Goliath. Very good. Okay, go sit with Blessy, but don't touch the fish, okay? Go sit. Go back. He defeated Goliath. So today's story, we're talking about forever. Does forever mean something stops?
No.
If it's forever, Gabriel, does it stop?
No.
No. It means it lasts. Right. Okay. So we're going to go into the Bible. And the Bible tells us a story about a person, a man named Lazarus. And guess what? Lazarus was one of Jesus's very best friends. Lazarus also had 2 sisters. Does anyone have a sister?
I have a sister.
Does anyone have 2 sisters? I have 2 sisters. You have 2 sisters?
Less than 2 sisters.
Cool. You have less than 2 sisters.
Less than 1, 2 sisters.
Just one. Okay.
Less than
Very
1
good. So you know this
I'm just
story.
the only one.
So Lazarus had 2 sisters, one named Martha and one named Mary. Very good. I'm happy you know this story. So one day, Lazarus said, I'm not feeling too well. I'm feeling very sick. And so he laid down, and his sisters, how did they feel? How do you feel when your brother or sister is sick? Sad, huh? and you get a little worried. And they were worried. So you know what they did? They said, you know what? I know what can help Lazarus feel better. Let's call Jesus. So back in the day, did they have cell phones?
No.
Did they call and be like, hey? No, they couldn't. So they had to do what?
Send a paper.
There wasn't even mail yet. They actually had to go find Jesus and tell him in person and then go back. And do you think they had fast cars?
No.
So how did they get around?
They got a person and they told.
And when donkeys go super fast, have you ever seen a donkey go super fast? No. Kind of looks like this. Is that super fast?
No.
It's not. So it took like a whole day to get to where Jesus was. So Martha and Mary sent one of their friends to go find Jesus, and then he said, Jesus, we need you. Come with us. Lazarus is so sick. And what do you think Jesus said?
No.
Jesus said, I'm so sorry to hear that. As soon as I'm done here, I will come see Lazarus. And then they went back. And so Jesus kept preaching. He was preaching to a big congregation. And he preached, and the day ended. And he woke up, and he started preaching and preaching again, and he spent all day preaching. And then he finally left to go to see Lazarus. And so they got on the donkey, and again, the donkey was going super fast. And he finally got there. So when he was getting close to the house, he said, oh my gosh, look at all these people. And he was trying to get to the door, and all those people were there, and they were crying. Why do you think they were sad and crying?
Because Lazarus was dead.
Lazarus had passed away. He died. And so when Jesus opened the door, Martha saw him. And Martha was so sad, and she's like, Jesus, you're here. If you had been here sooner, I think Lazarus wouldn't have died. And that made Jesus feel a little sad. And then he said, but don't worry, he will rise again. And Martha still was sad. She said, I know. And she believed when he said that he would rise again when God returns to resurrect us. So then she said, I'll be right back. And she walked away, and she went to go find her sister Mary. And she said, Mary, Jesus is here. And Mary was crying. She was so sad and heartbroken that her brother had passed away. And she came running, and she said, she was crying. She's like, Jesus, Lazarus is dead. Why didn't you come sooner? If you would have been here, he wouldn't have died. And that made Jesus even more sad. And it made him so sad to see his two friends crying that he cried. But then he said, wait. If you believe and in God's power, watch and see. So he went out. He said, come with me. He said, take me to where Lazarus is buried. So back in the day, when people died, they had to take care of the body themselves. Nowadays, when someone dies, they're in the hospital or the ambulance takes them away and someone takes care of that. But families had to take care of the dead person. So they would wrap their hands and their head, and then they'd get this really long cloth, and they'd start to wrap the entire body until it was all covered up, and it looked like what?
A mummy.
A mummy, very good. And after they wrapped it all up, they also used to pour perfumes and good-smelling things, because what happens when something starts to go bad? It stinks. And at this point, Lazarus had been dead for how many days?
4 days.
4 days. And it's hot there. So have you ever left your food out and you come back and you're like, oops, and it's all gross and stinky? Have you ever left a chicken nugget under the seat and it gets all gross and stinky? Yeah, gross, huh? Anyway, so Jesus walks, and they take him to where the tomb is. They used to have these big caves, and then they would cover the tomb with a big rock, the opening with the big rock.
Where Jesus died, in a tomb.
Yes, very good. Jesus was also put in a tomb. So Lazarus was in this tomb, and so when Jesus got there, there was people there, and they were also mourning him. So they were crying, and they were sad because he had passed. And he said, excuse me, can someone help me move this rock? And so a bunch of strong men came and they helped and they pushed this big, big rock. And the tomb was open. And everybody was standing there looking at each other like, this is weird. He's in there. He's probably stinky. What's going to happen? And guess what? Jesus said, Lazarus, get up. And what happened next? He got up. And all of a sudden, coming out of the tomb, you see a what? What did we say he looked like? A mummy. Everybody was like, whoa, how did he move if he's dead? And Jesus said, he's alive. And so then they all started to take his bandages off, and when he could see, he was so happy to see everyone, but most of all, he was happy to see who? Jesus. And he hugged him, and Mary and Martha hugged him, and he said, you just have to believe. In God, we have life. That's one story. What's another story that Maya just mentioned of someone that was in a tomb? Jesus.
And guards were there.
And there were guards.
Then
And did he stay dead in the tomb?
Then the angel came.
For 3 days. Very good.
Then the angel come, and then he rolled away the stone. Then Jesus came back, and he said he's going to go to heaven.
Very good. So Jesus also rose from the dead. There was another time Jesus had been out preaching, and he was coming to a city called Nain. And it was, do you remember or you don't remember, but we've heard back in the day, cities had walls, and then it had a big gate that you can go into. And as they were approaching the gate, he saw a procession or a lot of people walking, and there was people holding something up. There was a bunch of guys holding some 5 minutes, and that person had passed away. It was a young man who was the son of a lady who was a widow. Does anyone know what it means to be a widow?
Oh, I know. Husband died. Their husband died.
Yeah, you become a widow when your husband or wife passes away and now you're alone. So the lady's husband had passed away, and she only had her son to help take care of her in her home. And so she was very heartbroken and crying. And Jesus saw them, and Jesus was like, why are you crying? And she said, because my son is dead. And he said, young man, get up and go home with your mom. And how do you think everyone felt? All of a sudden, there was a body there, and it stood up. And he was back alive. That is the power that we have in Jesus. So what is our theme of the day?
Jesus Christ lets us live forever.
Just Jesus.
Very good. Jesus' power lets us live forever. And when Jesus comes back, guess what? He's going to bring us all to life, and we're going to go to heaven with him.
Of God who raised Jesus from the dead lives in you.
Very good. The Spirit of God that lives in you, the Spirit of God who raised Jesus from the dead lives in you. Okay? Okay, let's stand and have a quick prayer. Ready? Does someone want to pray? Do you want to pray? Okay.
From the leaders?
Oh, from the leaders, one of our students can pray. Ready? Bow your heads.
Gracias, Señor, por mi día, por mi mami, por mi papi, por mi hermanito, por mi hermanita, mi grandma, mis tíos y toda mi familia. Gracias por mi vida. Amén.
Amen. Okay, good. Thank you for being such great listeners. I'll see you later.